Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Leaders Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very well-respected member of the investigation community, Ron Harrison, and we're here to talk about Ron's journey, Ron's experience, the challenges, the issues that we face as private sector investigators in this forever changing field. Welcome, Ron. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, Mike. It's Ron Harrison. I'm the managing director of a company called Surelock. And as you say, we've been around for quite a long time. And it's a pleasure to take part in this.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ron. So just talk to me a little bit about your experience within the sort of private sector investigating. Give us a little bit of a briefing in terms of what you did historically when you were involved in the police and how you've come into the private sector. Just a bit of background.
I was a career detective for 30 years, apart from the statutory couple of years that you have to go back to uniform. And I retired in 1999. In those days, I used to do a little bit of sailing. And I was out sailing all over the place, and I kept getting pager messages from a very well-respected senior officer called Roy Herridge. And he kept saying, you've got to come and see me. I want you to work with me and all things like that. Roy had set up Surelock and another company in the early 90s. Roy was very well-respected in the police, got the Queen's Police Medal. Eventually, I gave in and went down to see him and started doing some work for him, which was basically like insurance investigations and organising surveillance and things like that. And we got on really well. And the company, it's a very small company, but we like to provide a professional and personal service. Sadly, Roy's in a home nowadays. I mean, he's well in his 80s, so doesn't take any part in the business anymore. But the company started to grow, and we developed a team of guys, all people that we'd known in the police, to work with us in different expertise. And then in 2000, we got approached by a famous American rapper who had quite serious problems with counterfeit clothing. And it was appearing all over the place. It was the hoodies, the baggy jeans and all things like that. And we'd never done brand protection work or intellectual property investigations at all. And we were a little bit skeptical. So we went about it the old-fashioned detective way. We went out there, we did surveillance, we saw where it was being sold. We saw the warehouses that were storing it and the people that were selling it. And we had great success. And then I got invited out to their offices in New York, went into a boardroom, sat in the boardroom, was about a dozen people, all with shoulder holsters on. And I think, my word, what have I come to? And then they all gave their little presentation. And we gave our presentation. And we managed to trace all the problems back to South Korea, where it was being manufactured. And basically they said to us, well, get out there and sort it out. So we went to South Korea. Initially, we were going to go and see the people in the British Embassy. But on the morning we were going to go out, we decided just to pitch up at one of the factories. So we went to the factories, and there was this little Korean man at the end with a till and a computer and all the fakes in the world in this warehouse. So we went up to him, and the guy I was with, quite a big guy, he just said to him, you've got to stop this. And the guy said, I will. And I'll tell you everyone else who's doing it. So it just took off then. We had such success with the Korean Intellectual Property Office, who were raiding places all the time for us, that lots of other rappers and other brands contacted us and said, can you work for us? So that side of the company really took off. So apart from the sort of private detective side with the surveillance and the fraud and all the investigation work, we were doing brand protection work as well. And the two companies run side by side until a few years ago when we amalgamated them.
Got you. Understood. So your sort of skill sets that you developed within the public sector and the police, transferring those into the private sector, did you see any sort of challenges or any sort of differences in terms of trying to get things moving in the private sector, or on the contrary, was it a little bit, was it less red tape to deal with?
Because I went to work with Roy, who had already established the company, and even by then, in the early stages, it was quite well respected. We didn't have a lot of problems. And then we looked at the ABI and we thought, this is an association. In the early days, we joined every single association that was available. And after a few years, we kicked a few of them into touch. But the ABI was the first one that we really sort of got settled in. And then for us to get into the ABI, and a lot of the guys that were working with us wanted to become members as well, we had to take a test. So we're looking at each other thinking, hold up, we've done 30 years in the police and they want us to take a test. Fortunately, it was the old tick the boxes exam, which was held in the Civil Service Centre in London. And we were all sat there with an invigilator and we're looking at each other as if to say, my word, what's the answer to number one? We all went through it and we all passed. So, it was good. And then once we got to know the ABI, the things that were coming from a police detective background, you think you know it all, you suddenly realise in a private organisation, there is a wealth of knowledge. And the way the ABI is run, obviously there's training, marketing and sort of events, where you meet all the other members and that. And we suddenly realised we'd picked the right one. Then at the same time, because of the counterfeiting work we were doing, we joined another association, which was called the Anti-Counterfeiting Group. And they're like they liaise with government bodies and things like that, and also organise raids and things, on behalf of all the members. So we became a member of that more or less at the same time for that side of the business. And because we went about our anti-counterfeit work in a different way to a lot of other people. We used to send people out doing surveillance, take photos, video clips and all things like that. We started building up intelligence for joint operations that affected everyone. And that went very well. And then the next major one we joined was the World Association of Detectives. But I must admit, I'm not a proactive member of that. We use them over the years, and I've contacted you, when we say in this particular country, do you know anyone here? And it's worked, you've put us in contact with people that we can use. I think the camaraderie with all these organisations and the knowledge is so important.
Oh, completely. And me, I'm an associations man, Ron. I've networked 25 years in associations, different ones around the world, and you build these trusted relationships with other professionals that can be an extension to your team, and that's really important, especially in the private sector.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the associations you've had some senior leadership positions, especially in the ABI. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the year. I've been a member of the ABI, or we were all members, obviously, I think for about 15 years, I think. And just used to go along to the meetings and the networking and chat with people. And then we went to one of the annual events, and Tony, who runs the Secretariat for the ABI, said to me, he said, I think it was down in Brighton, he said, we want you on the GC. They hardly gave me any option, announced I was on the General Council. And I enjoyed being on that because you get involved with interviewing people. The thing nowadays, it's gone away from the old-fashioned detective work. It's, the old detective sergeant that suddenly becomes a private investigator. I actually do some work for the BBC on a series I love called Shakespeare and Hathaway. And they based me on the character. They said, why did you select me to do the script editing? They said, well, you're a detective, you're a private detective now, and you're slightly overweight. And that's what that's how it happened. But it's nice to be involved on ground roots level with these associations. You can see now there's people coming in from all walks of life. People that have gone to university, they've studied criminology and joined an association like the ABI. You still get the ex-police officers in there as well, and and I say about a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you're talking about surveillance experts, people that do bug sweeps, computer forensics, and all this. It's massive. Then they asked me to, well, more or less told me that I was becoming the discipline chairman, and because the sort of organisation, and we got like 300 or 400 members, you do end up with situations where people have to be disciplined, and we dealt with a few fairly serious ones, but dealt with them all amicably and got everything sorted. And then the next thing, I was asked to be the president, and I found that quite an honour. I was quite surprised, because sort of the people that have been president before have been with them a lot longer than I had. But we had a really good GC, General Counsel. And I thought, well, yeah, this would be nice. And we all got on tremendously well together. All the major decisions, we talked them through, but usually agreed on them. And there were some interesting things were going on during that time as well. Unfortunately, while I was president, the COVID hit. So a lot of guys were sat at home. I mean, a lot of people gave up the business. It was quite sad in a way, and we had to sort of try and keep them all together. And that's when we first started doing interviews and meetings online, get everyone together and have a chat and how's things going. And that's really it. I was president for 3 years, and then I stood down. But I still like to think I'm a fairly active member.
Yeah, you certainly are, Ron. Thank you. So with the newer guys coming in or choosing a career in the private sector, what challenges do you think the guys face? Because historically it was, and been around for 30 years myself, it was quite a closed industry. You had to either come from a particular background or know someone who was operating in order to really make it work in the private sector. But I do see that changing now. What challenges do you see the younger guys coming into the industry that want to choose this as a career?
Yeah, because I'm a little bit of an old dinosaur and probably fairly well known, I do get people call me or email me and say, look, I'm thinking of coming into this profession. Can you help? And I always have a long chat with them, or I'll meet them for a coffee if they're local. And I say, well, what exactly do you want to do? And you work out, some of them might come in, they just purely want to do with process serving. Others, it would be surveillance. Other people want to get involved in investigations. A lot of them, although, as I said before, have come from a university background, they've got little practical knowledge. So I tell them, have a look at the ABI, come along to a branch meeting, start speaking to people, and then you'll realise, is this for me? And I think that's the most important thing, that they've realised they've picked a profession that they're going to be dedicated to. And the benefits of something like the ABI is the training facilities it offers. They will train people in open source intelligence, in surveillance, all things like that. And I think that's the most important thing, that they're coming in, they're fairly open about it, but they're prepared to learn.
Wise words there. Thanks, Ron. How do you see the industry changing then? Because, from when we started, you said one thing right at the beginning when you were looking to come into the private sector, that you were contacted via a pager. Your pager kept on going off. I mean, they're talking about methods of comms back then compared to what they are now. How do you see the industry evolving and changing in the future?
One thing I think licensing is obviously going to come in the not too distant future. I mean, consecutive governments have discussed it. I mean, Roy and I went up to a Home Affairs Select Committee and we gave evidence. That must have been 10 years ago, and it was discussed then. And we thought, okay, this government's treating it seriously. Then all sorts of other things happen, and it never rears its head. But I think licensing should come in. I mean, the way the ABI is run, you're practically licensed anyway, because you're members of a credible association. You can't go out and do anything you want, otherwise you'll be thrown out, sort of thing. But I think in not too many years' time, the industry will be licensed.
Yeah, I remember that Select Home Affairs Committee meet 2013, I think it was. We were there as well. And I agree. Yeah, the ABI self-regulated. We self-regulate, don't we? So we self-regulate, and we have a a joining criteria for new members coming in. Licensing, I get it. It's been talked about for longer before I started my journey as an investigator. So I don't know, to be honest with you. But the next thing that's out there is the code of conduct,
Yes.
The GDPR code of conduct, and that was just recently approved by the ICO, which I think would have a positive effect in the industry if the uptake through the sort of litigation world and lawyers are using that as a criteria for instructing private sector investigators. What's your thoughts on that? Right?
Well, the code of conduct, obviously a lot of work has gone in to the code of conduct, and we've got to respect the Secretariat and Tony for all the work that's been done there. That started while I was president. A lot of people are frightened by it. They're not sure how it's going to affect them as a business. If I don't select to go into it, is it going to affect my business? Are people going to say I won't get any work because I haven't joined up to the code of conduct? I think it's important that it is regulating our business even more now, so everyone has to adhere to quite a strict code of conduct, which has taken a long while for the ICO to approve it. And I mean, the Law Society are behind us. They've been behind the ABI before. They've always been behind the ABI. So I think it's very important for our business.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's the biggest bit of private sector news we've had in a while. Failing licensing is that our UK regulator, the ICO, have approved a code of conduct, a GDPR code of conduct that our investigators have to comply to, which is great. Let's see how that develops.
And particularly being developed by the ABI, because there are other organisations out there, but the ABI have really taken that one to heart.
That was through your sort of presidency journey, and mine now as well, in terms of how many years the ABI have been, preparing and trying to get this code approved.
And prior to me, it was Dick Smith, and Dick was 100%, with putting it all together as well.
We're putting it all together, correct. So this is a bit of a topic where hopefully you could shed some light in terms of what makes a good leader, Ron?
I think I don't consider myself a leader, to be honest. Or I now run the company. I'm the managing director of a company, but I'm just one of the team. I've always been a workaholic. Right through my police days, I was a workaholic. The job always came first, and to a certain extent, it still does. I think the most important thing with a leader is you lead by example, and also the people that are working for you can talk to you. I mean, the whole of our team ring me up, talk me through a scenario. It's like if we do a surveillance operation, I insist upon being informed what's happening, and I act as the link between the surveillance team and the client. So we can do it like that. And all the investigations we do, I mean, some of them are quite complicit or complicated. I like to know what's going on. I don't like someone sort of sending me an email through 6 weeks after it's happened and sort of said, "Oh, here's that one we did." And I just like to be kept informed. So I think it is leading by example, and the fact that you're quite happy to speak to anyone about it. In the business, I try and speak to every single potential client that comes in, even if it's someone just ringing up with a little bit of an inquiry, like an old granddad, basically, and having a little chat with them and sort of finding out what's going on. And if we can't do anything, I'll tell them, I'm sorry, I don't think we can do anything. In actual fact, there's a lady telephoned me this morning with an infidelity matter, and her husband is an Uber driver. That would be an absolute nightmare for a surveillance team following an Uber driver around all day. And when I explained it all to her, she realised. So it's just, I think, being approachable, talking to people, talking to clients, obviously talking to the team, and the fact the team are happy to talk to you.
Yeah, so being approachable and making sure that anyone in your team or anyone that's connected to you's got direct access to you and your knowledge. All right, let's finish up on this then, Ron. To summarise, what benefit do international and local associations give to the newer member and also the more experienced investigator that's operated in the private sector?
Yeah, I mean, when someone joins an association, what I try to do is get a mentor to say, well, where do you live? And they say, oh, I live in Liverpool. I said, well, there's a Northern Branch meeting in Liverpool, and there's a really good guy there, and I'll get him to mentor you. So to try and help them. So new people coming in, they need a little bit of experience, and they need a little bit of guidance as well, even putting reports together. I mean, some people will ring you up and say, how much do I charge? They genuinely don't know how much they're going to charge. And you say to them, look, the average hourly rate for an investigation like that is this amount, and then you leave it to them. But I think apart from the camaraderie and the social side, because I think that's important as well, it's being able to speak to people, knowledge base. Obviously, with the secretariat, there's a lot of knowledge with the secretariat, so they can contact there. The way the ABI works as well is the way a lot of work gets funneled into the ABI and then comes out to the members. And then, you might have only been a member for 2 weeks and you've suddenly been given a job. I think, that's quite important.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ron. People by people in the private sector, I think, and you develop these personal relationships by showing up, joining associations and meeting fellow colleagues. If anyone wants more information about the association Ron has mentioned, or the associations, that's the ABI, the Association of British Investigators, the WAD, the World Association of Detectives, and the
ACG, Anti-Counterfeit Group.
ACG, sorry, the Anti-Counterfeiting Group. Those details will be on your screen now. Thanks, Ron. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Have a great day. Hope to see you again soon.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.